Inkquiring Minds. My name is Doug and I'm back with another Pen Resurrection Sunday video. If you joined me last Saturday for my Doug's birthday pen sale, thank you very much for participating. All but one of those pens were sold. And it wasn't actually my birthday on Saturday, it was just the Saturday before my birthday. Today is my birthday, today is Tuesday, and I've saved a special fountain pen to resurrect for this coming Sunday's broadcast. I thought on my birthday I'd resurrect one of my favorite vintage pens to restore, a Parker Vacumatic first generation. I purchased this on eBay several weeks ago and have been holding on to it just for this occasion. I did actually get a deal on this beautiful silver pearl Parker Vacumatic first generation because visually there are certain things that seem wrong with this pen, but I assure you they're not wrong. There's the section, beautiful silver pearl. The photos of the nib showed that the nib is off center to the feed. Well, that's an easy fix. The real question is that nib in good shape? And I actually, for my birthday, went out and got this big, beautiful magnifier from Lee Valley Tools. And when you touch it, it lights up. So there's LEDs on the inside when you touch it. And so it's nice, big viewing area. It's not that strong a magnification, but I thought it should work well for the camera. Let's see how close we can get here. Yeah, that's not too bad. Nice clear shot. So you can see what I'm seeing. That nib is in excellent shape. It may be askew from the feed, but I can fix that easily. The other thing about this pen that caused people not to want to buy it, it's missing its end Tassie and jewel. But I know a guy on the internet where I can get these parts. His name is Dale Beebe, and he is the proprietor of pentooling.com. So I sent my measurements there and there out to Dale and asked him which of his many Tassies and end jewels might fit my pen. This is a smaller size pen. First generation, it's probably a junior. It has the 3 cap rings, and it is approximately, I'd say, 117, 118 millimeters with the end jewel and Tassie. So he told me exactly which Tassie and which end jewel to buy. So I bought these parts and I had to wait a couple of weeks for them to arrive. And there is the Tassie in place, and there is our end jewel, and we just simply screw that in and it's complete. Now, it's not going to be original. This original top jewel right here has the same stacked silver pearl celluloid that the end jewel should have, but you can't get those anymore unless you take it off an old pen. So the black will suffice, but at least the pen is complete with a silver Tassie and a black jewel on the end. So I'm going to remove that, and we'll put that aside for later, and we'll take a closer look at this pen and see what it needs to come back to the world of the writing and living. So let's start with that top jewel, shall we? It's beautiful silver pearl celluloid in that striped stacked celluloid pattern, holding the original Joseph Platt designed Parker Arrow clip in silver. Now this might be silver filled, or it might be silver plated over brass. I think it's filled. Most of the first generation were filled, and it looks in great shape. It has some corrosion on it, just a little bit here and there, but I'm sure I can polish out to make it look like brand new again. And that clip is in there really tightly. Might require a little bit of heat, or my special Pensbury Manor potion, number 7 or number 9 or whatever it is. Now the cap bands look gold. We'll see what happens when they get polished up. It might be that the silver plate on that is gone and we're seeing brassing underneath, but I don't know. But if you look at the cap celluloid, there's not a lot of scratches on it. There's a couple of scratches there that'll need some polishing, and a little bit of a gouge, another little mark there. Not bad at all for its year. Let's see if we can get a year on this with a date code. There's the GOS Parker Vacumatic, made in the USA, and it's very faint. I don't know that I can see that on camera or not. Under my loop it says 3.5. Now that's coincidentally in 1935, but it doesn't stand for 1935 in the digits. It's 3 for the third quarter and 5 for 1935. So it is in fact the third quarter of 1935. We'll have to see if the nib has the same date in print. You often see these pens with mismatched barrels and nibs. Now the barrel has a few scratches on it here and there. Not bad at all, really. And if you notice, maybe you can pick this up right there. This is silver and this looks gold. That's from ink leaching into the celluloid over years and years and years. So from the inside of that barrel to the outside. You see this a lot on vintage pens where the caps don't match the barrels because of ink staining on the inside of the barrel. And of course that end finial is gone. The Tassie and the jewel are gone. Let's take a look at the section. Beautiful stacked celluloid. And you notice how it kind of slopes. They were very uneven in their celluloid distribution on early pens. But that section looks in great shape. I don't see any scratches or gouges on it at all. Let's see whether we can take it apart. No, we can't. Not yet anyway. And this is a two-toned number 5 size Parker Arrow nib, and it's so deep in that section, lots of old ink in there, so deep in the section that you can't see any date code. But that nib looks terrific. Now you'll notice that the nib is deformed here. And that's because it's sideways on this feed. So as soon as we turn that nib back to the right orientation on the feed, it will stop being split and it will stop being misaligned as well. I am positive. We will see. I've been wrong before. But we're going to take our time with that because we don't want to do any harm or more harm to this pen. After all, this pen is 91 years old. So the first thing we want to do is to take these parts, put them in the ultrasonic bath of pen flush. I make my own pen flush. It's 9 parts distilled water and 1 part ammonia. And we'll stick it in the bath for about 2 to 3 minutes or so, and that'll loosen up any of that old ink in the cap and in the nib and feed, and might make it easier to get that section out of there. And I forgot to take the blind cap off and show you the pump mechanism. This is first generation, so it is a lockdown filler. The brass tip of that lockdown is all oxidized, but that will polish up really nicely. We give it a little bit of a twist and it pops out. Well, it's really rough, but that moves the diaphragm on the inside of the pen. You fill up your pen with ink after several pushes, and then you give it a twist and it locks down. Hence lockdown filler. So we'll take that part off, we'll extend the lockdown, and then we'll put all this stuff into the ultrasonic bath and then come back and see if we can get the section off. So here's the pen out of the bath. The cap and the blind cap are still in the bath. You can see that the brass already looks a little bit brighter, and so does the nib, looking very nice. Got all that old ink off it. Let's see if this section will come off. These should not be shellacked down. Sometimes the factory would put a little bit of shellac on them, but no, there we go, it turns. So that's just old ink, and it's sticking a little bit. There we go, no heat required. And there's our long breather tube. Lots of old ink still there. Let's see if we can take that out. A little bit of a twist. Yeah, it's in there deep. Long celluloid breather tube, that'll go back in the bath. That'll end up looking clear amber. And there's that feed very, very deep in that section. So I think I'm going to soak these parts again for another few minutes in the ultrasonic bath to see whether I can loosen up some of that ink inside that feed. And then that nib and feed will knock out of there a little bit easier. And now that the barrel is open, we can get some of that extraneous ink and maybe some parts of that dried up desiccated sac in there. Let's use our camera here and see what the diaphragm looks like inside. Give it a couple of pumps here, see what it looks like. And there was a lot of old desiccated latex diaphragm stuck inside there, and you could see that pump mechanism still working but not attached to a diaphragm. So back in the bath with you guys. And here we are, a couple minutes in the bath, and we'll see whether we can get that feed out of there. So I got out my block, find a good hole for it so it supports the section, and get out the rod and widen out a little bit. Do this without pounding my iPhone into smithereens. moving, but it's very tight. I think I'm going to soak it a little bit more, and I'm going to leave it a little bit wet. So that's after another couple of minutes. Yeah, that one was really tight. But there's the feed, and there's the nib. Still lots of old ink in there, look at that. So let's take a look at the nib here on the left-hand side, so we can show what it looks like when it's all polished up over here, front and back. And let's close up a little bit here and see that it's almost come back to shape. It needs a little bit of adjustment, and it's probably, you can probably see there's a gap through there. You can see that gap right there. That'll probably need to be closed down a little bit. So I'll work on this nib some by doing this, crossing it this way, and then crossing it that way, and just to close down that nib a little bit, otherwise it'll be too wet. And let's look at the section over here. There it is before we clean it up. It's rather dull, and it has that gold kind of a tinge to it. And here is our Ebonite feed, looking very good, but dull. That'll be really shiny, the part that's visible. I'll shine that up on my rotary polishing tool. But first, these are going to go back in the bath again for another 3 or 4 minutes, I think. Now we'll see whether we can get that pump out of there, because this pen is useless without that pump working. I suppose you could use it as an eyedropper, but that's the whole point, is having that Vacumatic fill. So let's see whether we can get that pump out of there with our vac extractor tool from the inky nib. So we remove the collet, we put it over top of the pump, and then we tighten it down as tight as it will go. And then we try it first without any heat to see whether it'll come loose. No. So we'll apply a little bit of heat to the celluloid. There should be no adhesive in there, so we're not melting any shellac or anything. We're just expanding the celluloid so that those threads will slide smoothly, and we can extract that pump. Put on my finger mitts here. And we just keep testing it. There we go. That's good, moving it. Just a little more heat. There we go. Good. I'm just going to add a little silicone oil here right now so that as I'm putting this on and off, it'll move a little bit freer. That's better. There. Now I'm just going to leave a couple of threads on there so that I can remove the collet here. And there we go. And we'll get out our block again. Release those threads. We're going to push the pump out from the barrel side. Find a hole that'll support the barrel. There we go. And just take our rod and give it a push. Pardon my fingers, but we don't want to wreck this. It does not want to release. Part of the old desiccated diaphragm in there, holding it in. In these first generation Vacumatics with the lockdown filler and the speedline fillers, the tip that holds the diaphragm in place, the pellet retainer, is aluminum. So you can add a little bit more force. But when you're using a third generation, they have Ebonite retainers on them, and if you pound on them, it's going to break that Ebonite. The aluminum is a little bit more resilient, so I'm just going to tap this lightly there to let it go through. There it is. And there you can see that aluminum top of that pellet retainer, and the pellet is still in there. But this 91-year-old pump is working just fine. Look at that. Let's check out the barrel. There's the old diaphragm still stuck to the inside of that barrel right there and there. So I'm going to use my dental probe to tease some of that old latex out of there. There's the rest of it. I just shot it out. And I cleaned out the barrel with my test tube cleaning brush attached to my drill. And that does a really good job of getting that barrel all nice and clean and spick and span. And for you non-North Americans or you millennials out there, Spick and Span was a brand of cleaning powder back in the 50s and 60s, I guess. So I'm showing my age and my nationality.
Just once over lightly with new spick and span. No rinsing, no wiping. Once over, it's grand.
So now we're going to have to drill out that pellet that's inside that pellet retainer. I'll use my tiny drill bit on my Dremel tool for that. So I drill a hole in that little round ball of celluloid and then pick it out with my dental pick. I don't think it'll come out otherwise. No, it's pretty tight in there. So I hold it flat on my surface and hold them tight together. We don't want to damage that retainer at all, but being aluminum, it's much more resilient than ebonite. And there's the pellet, and the retainer looks very good. Now we can put a new diaphragm on that pump and put it back in the pen. Now we can put a latex diaphragm back on that pump. I took the opportunity while purchasing those parts from Dale at Pen Tooling. I topped up my supply of Vacumatic diaphragms. Now let's get one of them out here, and we'll use our vac extraction tool from the Inky Nib, our pellet pusher from the Inky Nib, and some talc. And first what we have to do is use our pellet pusher to size this diaphragm to the proper dimension, and that dimension is 30 millimeters. I stick it here on my knockout block, and it's also a groove on my pellet pusher. Scott's put that groove in there to make it exactly the right length. Just going to trim off a little bit of the top of that first so that will fit all the way down to the pellet. The end of the pellet pusher needs to be flush up against that pellet, and then you feel for that mark. Or if you don't have this pellet pusher, you measure from the tip of the pellet down here 30 millimeters and make a mark, and that's where you make your cut. It's essential for the diaphragm to be the right dimension, otherwise it will impede the breather tube, and if it's too long, or if it's too short, not pump up enough ink. So I've made a mark right there. Just going to use my X-Acto blade to find that groove and to make a cut, and then trim it off square. There we go. And you see that's perfect right there. Perfect length. Now we need to push the pellet into the pellet retainer and hear a click. There it goes. You didn't hear the click, I felt it. And that looks good. Now we're going to dredge the inside and out of the latex diaphragm with talc, pure talc. This is a dry lubricant, and it will keep the latex from sticking to itself, because that's what latex wants to do, stick to itself, and we want it to slide properly. So now we're all talced up. We're going to peel this latex back on itself and make a cuff, and that cuff is going to roll all the way to there, to that shelf right there, the aluminum seat. And that angled aluminum seat is what presses up on the inside of the barrel to make a seal and hold the diaphragm in place. So let's see if we can get this to start. Usually getting it to start is the difficult part, and then the rest is the more difficult part. Gotta push it down using the pellet pusher as a mandrel. We're going to push it down the length of the pellet pusher, just sort of worrying it with my thumbnail here. And once I've got it almost to the tip, I try to push it over itself to get it up onto that little lip, and then I can unkink it afterwards once it gets to about here. A little bit more powder here. Yeah, once we get it to here, then I can push it over itself and get just that thin edge right there. Now, that's kinked up on itself on the inside. That's not correct. So I'm just going to hold on to the latex where it's sitting on that seat, that aluminum seat, and kind of try to get it to unkink itself. There we go. Yeah, that worked nicely. Hey, I'm proud of myself. That one worked out pretty well. And that's how it works. You see how it extends back and forward like that? And that's what it looks like on the top. It's like the diaphragm in your abdomen and moves up and down and pulls in air and pushes out carbon dioxide in your lungs. Make sure it's lined up properly. Now we can put that re-diaphragmed pump back in this barrel. And we're going to start this by adding some silicone oil just as a lubricant around the tip of that cuff so that it will slide nicely inside the barrel when I'm turning it so it doesn't kink up on itself. So we're going to put it in there and twist it back and forth and back and forth. And there, I feel it actually give. And now it's in there and sliding around nicely. I'm going to put some silicone oil on those threads as well. I did it earlier. I'm going to put more on it now so that those threads will slide nicely. Then we can add our collet and clamp it down. Clamp it down, Jed. Really tight. There we go. And we're just going to move it back and forth and get that silicone oil all over those threads so that there's no kinking, and I can feel that diaphragm on the inside turning as I do this. And then we hand tight. Remove the collet. Seems to be working. So let's get our inspection camera out again and take a look inside the barrel. Give it a couple of pumps, and we can see that it's all twisted up on itself. So I have to take it all apart again and make sure that it unkinks itself. So the whole thing again. Nope, it's all twisted up. So that does mean that this is the smaller diameter, so it needs a Deb-sized diaphragm on it. So here's our Deb-sized diaphragm. It's a little bit smaller in diameter, and we'll do this whole thing over again. There, that's taken me about 5 minutes to get it working properly. This one should fit. I should have known it was a Deb diaphragm for this one, and this should go in a little bit easier. And re-silicone those threads, and the diaphragm looks like it's correct in there. It's turning nicely. Of course, the last one was too, but it was all kinked up. And we tighten it down until it's hand tight. Now let's hope that works. So maybe the 5th time is the charm. So I've done this 5 times now, 4 times with a Deb diaphragm, and I think it's working properly now, but I won't be able to tell until I do a capacity test. So I'm going to put that barrel aside for now. We'll lock it down, and I'll come back with the polished up nib, feed, and section so we can put those together back into the barrel so we can give it a test with water for capacity. Okay, and there's our nib all polished up. One of the drawbacks of polishing a two-tone nib is that you're going to lose that platinum mask that was on this bit. It was already coming off. You can see it's all gold now, but the corrosion was already there, and I think this looks almost brand new. And now I can actually see what the date code is on the nib, and it says 25 right there. Maybe you can see that, but that's the second quarter of 1935. Not 1925. So there's the nib all polished up, and I also took the opportunity of adjusting that nib so that it is aligned properly and the tines are actually touching each other. So I can make that a little bit wetter if I want to, but I think it's in much better shape right now. So we'll put that together and then give it a writing test and see. Here's that Ebonite feed all polished and shiny. Look at that. Beautiful. And the section all polished up and looking lovely. Now the interesting thing about the breather tube is that it looks black, and you can see it on end there. It is black. So this might be an Ebonite tube, not a celluloid tube. But I've made sure that it's absolutely clear, and I've run water through it so that it is working fine. So now let's put this nib, feed, and section back together again. To do that, we're going to put the section back in the pen. I'm going to add a little silicone grease while we're here. Now let's put the breather tube back in the feed. See which end goes in. Maybe both, maybe neither end goes in. Well, it came out of here. There we go. So I also made sure that that breather hole in the feed from there to the hole right there is clear. And we want to make sure that we don't push the breather tube any further in to block that hole back here. And the longer the breather tube, the more ink we'll have as well. So there, it's in nice and tight. Get some gripper material, put the nib and feed together. You're going to hold it top and bottom. We're going to set that feed right into where there's a little bit of a notch hollowed out in the nib, and hold that top and bottom firmly. And then we're going to find the sweet spot where it wants to live, and then give it a push. And we see that it's all misaligned again. So that feed is definitely pushing that nib out of alignment. So we'll knock it back out again. and see whether we can do it better. Second time around. Took me 5 times for the diaphragm. Must be my lucky day, my birthday. Put the section back in to the barrel, allows a better grip. Now I think I'm going to sand the shank of this Ebonite feed down a little bit with some 400 grit sandpaper, and that gives a dry lubricant. That Ebonite kicks up a little bit of a dust and allows it to slide better inside the section. And you see the Ebonite turns brown. Line this up again, and I think the second time was the charm. There we go. It's aligned properly. Looks pretty good. Might need a little bit of adjustment there. But this is a very flexible nib. Look at that. I'm not putting any pressure on it at all. This is going to write like a beauty. So we needn't worry about that alignment. It'll kind of align itself because it's so flexible. So now I think I can give this pen a capacity test and to see how much water it will draw up. So we'll weigh the pen. 7.8, press tear, and then I'll pump some water into it. There we go, 1.8 milliliters of ink. That's really good for a small pen. And I just pumped it until I didn't hear any bubbles anymore. So it took about 7-8 pumps. So now I can do a dip test on this pen to see how that nib works. So here we go with some Watermans. Let's just dip the nib and we'll give it a try. And what we have here is a 35 Parker Vacumatic lockdown in silver pearl. This is very wet indeed, and I brought those tines together, so I might have to tighten them a little bit more. But look at the flex on this nib. Wow. Oh, this is soft. I don't think I've had a Parker Vacumatic as soft and flexible as this one. And let's check, see what the line widths are here. And so that's horizontal, and there's my vertical. I do it horizontal with no pressure so I can measure it with my tool. And then let's give it a push. Oh my god. Okay, I touched the feed. Try it again. There we go. It flexed right down, and I touched the feed, which has some ink on it. Now it's going to take an hour to dry. Wow. What a great writer. I'm just going to help that along with some blotting paper here. The top one is going to smudge out, but I should be able to measure the bottom one. Yeah, my pad from Dominant Industries. And let's check the line width here. So this looks like horizontally it's a 0.4, vertically is 0.5, and with a push 1 millimeter. So 0.4 to 0.5 to 1.0 millimeter. It feels like a medium because it's hard not to put any pressure. When I have no pressure at all, it can be very, very thin. And of course it writes with no pressure at all. But when you're writing normally, when I'm writing normally anyway, it just flexes. And there's a bit of feedback there too. I think I'm going to polish that out with some 8,000 to 12,000 grit micromesh. Let's do that right now. So first with the 8,000 grit, I'm just going to add a little drop of water there for lubricant. Of course there is still ink in this nib here. And I'm going to go up and down, side to side, all the points of the compass 8 times each. Counterclockwise circles, clockwise circles 8 times each. Infinity symbol, and then a figure 8 times each. There, now we'll do the same thing with the 12,000 grit. Remember, the important thing, especially with a flexible nib like this, is you don't want to add any pressure at all. So I'm moving my wrist and trying to maintain just a very light touch on the micromesh. Let the micromesh do the work. And hold the pen angle to the page in your regular, normal writing angle. And the reason is, with a flexible nib like this, if you push those tines out, you're going to be polishing the insides of those tines, and then you'll get baby's bottom, and the pen won't write properly. Let's see how it writes now. Oh, as smooth as glass. But what I'm going to have to do is tighten those tines down. And I showed you earlier how I'll just take the nib and cross the tines and push them in a touch, bounce, 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 and then the opposite direction just to keep them aligned. Bounce, 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 and then check our alignment. Looks pretty good. And let's try it again. Still very, very wet, but it's a little bit more controlled, he said, as he got globs of ink all over the place. No, I'm going to keep working on how wet this pen is. But some people might like it. It's really smooth and really flexible. Look at that. So now that we know that it takes a lot of ink and it's got a beautiful nib on it, I'll take the nib unit out, and that's one of the reasons why I polished that beforehand, so I wouldn't have to polish it with the nib in. We'll put that unit aside, and I'll rinse this out, and we'll polish this as one piece, and we'll see about getting that clip off. It's been sitting in the pen flush for quite a while. Look how silver that is now. Almost all of that corrosion is gone. A little bit there. It'll need some polishing. Be easier to polish this with my Dremel tool with the nib off, and it'll be easier to polish underneath that clip as well with the clip off. So I put a pencil inside the cap as a mandrel to help push against to see whether I can loosen that top jewel. Just going to put a card in here to protect the celluloid from getting further scratched by the clip, and we'll see whether we can turn that. It's turning a little bit. You can see it separating from the clip. Let's see if we can keep going here. There we go. And there's that celluloid top jewel, threaded. And there's that brass nut that holds the clip in place. It's a slot screw, so we use our mandrel again to push against. So fortunately I ground down a bit so that it's very thin and has the right diameter. And we'll slide it in the slot there and try to turn that brass nut. And there we go. And there's the clip. There's our cap free. Let's show the cap up here before I polish it. And we'll see it below. And here's the barrel beforehand with the blind cap. We'll avoid the imprint because it's very faint at this point. Where is it? Here, over here somewhere. There we are. Parker Vacumatic. So we'll try to avoid that. And let's put the clip up over here. Still a little bit of corrosion here and there, but I'll put this on my polishing wheel and we'll clean that up. And I'll wait until I have the whole pen assembled to do a final polish on that end finial. Easier to do it when it's in the pen. And here we are with the cap all polished up. You can see those cap bands are gleaming gold. I was unsure at one time when I was polishing them. With the micro mesh, the two outside bands looked like they were copper, and the inside band looked like it was brass. But the more I polished, the more the gold came through. So that is silver pearl with 3 gold cap bands, and it is flawless now. Now let's look at the barrel and the section down here, all polished up and beautiful with that gorgeous nib, and there it is. And the imprint is still there. Very, very faint on the date code, but it is there. So now all we have to do is reinstall the clip. Now let's put the clip over here. It looks just about the same because I put some metal polish on it and then polished just the bottom part of that clip, and it started going gold, which means that it's brass underneath and it was losing some of its silver. So I just rubbed it with a cloth rather than polish it with the buffer, because I didn't want to go through to it to make it look brass. But I think it looks pretty good now. So what we need to do is reinstall the clip. We have the brass nut and we have the top jewel. So the one thing I should do here is put the cap on, see where it comes to, and leave that imprint up. And the imprint should be up with the clip in place. The imprint is right there. The clip needs to be right there, and it's just adjacent to a breather hole, so I'm just going to move it slightly so it covers that breather hole. People always ask me, what are the breather holes for in those caps? Well, whenever you have a pen that has a latex sac or a latex diaphragm, air pressure changes will move ink in and out of the nib. Just the air pressure change from uncapping the pen can actually cause the pen to gush some ink out onto the nib and onto your shirt or hand or whatever. And so they put breather holes in the cap to equalize the pressure. And we get out our specialty slot screwdriver and we're going to tighten that nut down just a snug for now, and I'm just going to line it up and see. Yeah, that's not too bad. Parker Vacumatic, and the clip is right there. So I think I can probably tighten that down all the way right there. Going to hold on to the clip and give it a nice tight turn. Now we can start the top jewel thread into that brass nut and just use some gripper material, rubber matting, just to give it a tight turn there. And now I'll give that a buff on my buffing wheel just to polish it up. And now let's install the new blind cap Tassie. It fits in there perfectly. Thank you, Dale, from Pen Tooling. And we put the black plastic jewel in place. You notice it's just a little bit proud. These are modern remakes of these, so they don't fit exactly right. And I'm of two minds. I don't know whether I should leave it there and just say that's done, or whether I should try to file it down a little bit so it's flush. I kind of don't want to destroy it, so I'm going to just tighten that down and live with it for a bit. And there we have it, one beautiful 1935 Parker Vacumatic first generation silver pearl with a flexible nib, 14 karat gold nib, and the silver pearl on the section. And let's put it down here for a before after pass for those of you that don't want to watch the entire 30-minute resurrection. And I'll come back with my thoughts about this fountain pen resurrection. So I've done some work on this pen since I saw you last, milliseconds ago, through the magic of video editing. I worked on the nib a little bit more by crossing the tines to close that nib gap, and the pen is still writing wet, but is not as uncontrollable now. I also polished the top jewel so that it shines like the rest of the pen. There were no visible scratches on it, so it was easy. I also wanted to show you the translucency of this barrel now that it's got no ink in it, in that beautiful amber color, so you can see your ink levels in there. And I've done a little research on this particular model, the first generation Parker Vacumatic. According to Tony Fishier's marvelous repository of all things Parker, parkerpens.net, this is a first generation Parker Vacumatic Slender and is the same size as the Slender Junior, but with 3 cap bands. Parker would later call these shorter, thinner pens debutantes and then demis. I personally think we need more demis, or was that more demi-moors? Yeah, I think more demi-moors.
That'll be $27.50.
So what are my thoughts about this particular pen resurrection? For me, all Parker Vacumatic first generation pens are special. Parker only made them for 5 years, from 1933 through 1937, although the quality of the manufacturing remained very high through to the retirement of the model in 1948. Parker changed the Vacumatic through the second and third generations with design changes and material changes necessary due to economic conditions and as a result of the U.S. war effort. Remember that Parker introduced the Parker Vacumatic in the depths of the Depression after investing $125,000 US and 5 years of research into the project. That's equivalent to $2.5 million today. I think the Parker Vacumatic first generation pens from 1933 to 1937 represent the pinnacle of fountain pen design and manufacturing. The fact that this 91-year-old pen still looks and writes like it was brand new is testament to that. And it holds a whopping 1.8 milliliters of ink. That's 0.3 milliliters more than this enormous Leonardo Momento Zero Grande. Amazing. This resurrection started as a breeze. The parts from Dale Beebe at Pen Tooling fit perfectly. Thanks for your help, Dale. And the pen came apart very easily. The nib and the feed were easy to straighten, and that nib turned out to be one of the most flexible gold Parker Vacumatic nibs I've ever experienced. But then I made the mistake of thinking that this pen would take a standard diaphragm. Even when I corrected the mistake and put in a debutante-sized diaphragm, it took me 4 attempts to get it to work properly. So it only goes to show you.
Well, Jen, it just goes to show you. It's always something. If it's not one thing, it's another.
And here's the pen next to my third generation Parker Vacumatic Major in Azure Blue Pearl. You can see this pen is slender and short and would fit a small hand nicely. And this third generation Major isn't a large pen in itself. Here it is with my Waterman Karen in Marine Amber. And just as I was filming this, there was a knock on my door and the delivery man delivered another Parker Vacumatic. Wouldn't you know? Yes, I like the Parker Vacumatic, and I'm going to keep repairing them. They are built like Mack trucks, and I found techniques that are working for me, and you people are snapping them up before I can even publish the video. So yes, I'm going to continue restoring these pens. I've got another one after this coming, but I thought let's unbox this while we're doing this review. It's already out of the box. Okay, let's just cut to the chase. I'm wasting film. It doesn't want to come out. And here it is. This is a 3rd generation Golden Pearl. This is not the one I expected. I expected the other one first. I bought one that's like this. It's got a broken clip, and that's okay because I have a parts pen here, the Parker Vacumatic, with a clip that I can donate to that one. Well, that one's not going to come till next week, I guess. This is 3rd generation Parker Vacumatic Golden Pearl. It is a junior model, which is exactly the same size as the 3rd generation senior model. The only difference is the cap bands. The junior has 2 cap bands. The senior has the wide gold chevron. And the clips are different in that the major has the blue diamond clip, where the junior does not. And this one has a lovely gold nib. Not much wrong with it. Looks like a fine or an extra fine, and just needs some cleaning. And, well, there seems to be a diaphragm in there too. Doesn't feel like it's working properly, but I have experience now with Parker Vacumatic diaphragms not working properly. Just see this video for the evidence. So back to this pen. Yes, I'm going to sell this pen. If I could get my hands on a burgundy pearl version of this in the senior or standard size, I wouldn't let it out of my hands. But this one is a little bit small and delicate for me, so I'm going to sell it, and I'm going to sell it for $260 US plus shipping. If you're interested, please send me an email with your name and your address so I can get you a shipping quote, and I'll send you instructions on how to pay using PayPal. And even though this pen was made in the United States, it will still be subject to US tariffs because it was restored in Canada. And there you have it. If you like this video, please like and subscribe, and don't forget to ring that bell to get instant notifications whenever a new video is posted. And you can join as a member of my channel for only 99 cents a month, and I guarantee I'll answer your comments in the comment section. You will get cool emojis, badges, a sneak peek unboxing videos, as well as instant access to my videos the moment I post them. Basic members at $1 a month get 10% off, and $5 a month patron members get 20% off these Pen Resurrection pens. And that just leaves it for me to say, thank you for watching. And that's all she wrote.
I made this.